warm welcome to our podcast, Meet the Expert in Sport Management. This is your podcast about topics in sport management and economics and in sport governance and politics. We will always have a look at ethical issues. This podcast is a cooperation between the Johannes Gutenberg University in Mainz and the German Olympic Academy DOA. Our topic today is Futurous, a commitment to bring an ethical perspective into sport and esports. And our guest is Philippe Blanchard. Philippe has 25 years experience in technology and mega events. He founded Futurous, the Games of Innovation, a new type of competition associating male and female, athlete and para-athlete, sport and e-sport, mankind and robots, and offering education and interactivity between competitors and spectators. Philippe was beforehand working for the Expo 2020 and helped them to win the bid race against other cities. Before that, Philippe Blanchard was director of the International Olympic Committee, where he has set up the knowledge management principles and helping bid cities and organizing committees to better perform their Olympic Games and to look at Olympic legacy. On a personal level, he is an active member of several United Nations working groups, for example, e-governance and smart cities, and on the US and European chapters of the Internet Society ESOC. Welcome, Philippe, and I'm happy that you're here with us. So, Philippe, great to have you with us tonight. Welcome to our podcast.
Thank you, Holger.
Okay, you have a very interesting job and you are working with Futurous and the Futurous Games. There are more and more events worldwide, like the World Urban Games, which are the sports you can do in a city, or World Artistic Games and World Combat Games. Now there are Futurous Games. So what are the Futurous Games of 2023? Can you explain them a little to us?
Yes, thank you. We think that sports needs to be reinvented on some element. And the first element important for us is to make sure we have team-based competitions. And we want to have in the teams males and females. We want to have athletes and para-athletes in the same team, esports and sports in the same team, and robots and humans in the same team. And the second element, which is important for us, is to make sure that the relationship to the fan is different. And that's the reason why we want all our events and our competitions to be interactive, i.e. the fan must be active. They are actors. They have the capacity to engage with the competitors. They have the capacity to engage with the field of play. And we will have these two principles implemented in 5 galaxies. One is esports. The second one is the technology of mobility. So we will have drones competitions, sustainable mobility or smart mobility competition. The third galaxy is robotics and exoskeleton. So we will have robots competition. We will have robot design competition. The fourth galaxy is augmented reality, virtual reality. And the last galaxy is about the sport of the future, which are classical sports sometimes revisited by technology. It can be dancing in the wind tunnel. It can be kinetic wall climbing. It can be kinetic parkour races. So over the last 3 years, we have engaged with sports federation, we have engaged with universities to identify what were the opportunities, and we have also worked with the different communities worldwide to better understand what were their expectations. So the Futurous Games will be the combination of these new opportunities and the expectations of our communities.
Wow, this is really interesting. So you mentioned so many galaxies. Let's dive into the one or other galaxy. When you said robotics and sport, do you think robots are competing against each other, or is it that humans and robots compete together, or what is your idea in that?
We want our objective is to bridge humanity and technology. Our objective is to show that technology is part of our lives and technology will have an impact on our different communities. So we want to have teams of humans and robots in the same team competing against other humans and robots. And you have many opportunities. You can do a kind of a robot pentathlon where you have a pentathlon for humans and you have a pentathlon for robots, and you want to assess the versatility of the robots, and you tell them you need to have 5 disciplines, including jumping, including running, including throwing. So what we have been working on is really to identify the formats, the new format of these competitions. And you will understand that because we want to keep an element of surprise, we are not willing to communicate everything now, but trust us, it will be exciting and inspiring.
Yes, it was always exciting for humans to also compete against machines. We know that from chess, where
Exactly.
this started at least with chess, where we had a human competing against the artificial intelligence.
But Holger, if I may, because you take the example of chess, there has been a race of creating more and more efficient computers for chess playing. But now the best players are a combination of humans and computers. So this is something which is compelling for us and for me, because as I said, in the future, we will have to work with robots, and we need to prepare the future. We need to use the convening power of sport and competition to demonstrate technology and to prepare our communities for the future.
Mm-hmm. One other galaxy you mentioned was drones, and I think this is really interesting, as we have already a drone flying competition in the next Asian Games. So there is already drone flying entering the past sport events. So what could be new in this, or what is the challenging part in the drone flying? Is it like just 2 people stand there and fly their drone, and who is the quickest?
So we can be creative, and we need to be creative. First of all, I like your example because you stress the classical drones race, but you have the possibility also to have surfing pulled by a drone. You can use drones to pull surfers. And what I want to do is to have a team of 2 athletes, one with a handicap, one without a handicap. So the first leg of the competition, the athletes with the handicap will be flying the drone, and you will have the standing athletes pulled by the drone on the surfboard. And the second leg, it will be the athletes with the handicap, which will be on a specifically designed board, and he or she will be pulled by the other athlete. So what I want to stress is there are numerous opportunities about drones, and we need to be creative, so we are going beyond the most visible element. Another option, for instance, is to have a Drones for Good awards, i.e., we are not creating a sport competition, but we are creating an intelligence competition. We ask universities, we ask researchers, we ask inventors to answer a specific question, how to deliver medicine in a fast and easy way, how to avoid collision between different drones. And we give the requirements, and then we assess the different options and the different ideas which have been proposed. And this concept of drones for good was already implemented when I was working in Dubai with the Dubai government for Expo 2020. And the Prime Minister's office created the Drones for Good Awards, where they invited people from all over the world to present new development around drones. This is one of the concepts of Futurous.
That's interesting. And one other and last galaxy I would like to stress is the virtual reality. And we all had some contact with virtual reality already, and the broadcasting stations or broadcasters are starting to work with it. Google is producing 1 billion of Google glasses and so on. Is this the way that we can bring the events to the homes of the people, that they can watch the events and attend the events with virtual reality? Or are you thinking of also doing sports with the glasses and competitions while you are at the competition side?
It's a very interesting point, and there are obviously ethical questions, there are technical questions. But what I loved in the concept of augmented reality and virtual reality, imagine you have a series of competitions in different places, because now we have been used to have a global competition in one place, even though we know there are different Olympic venues or there are different FIFA stadiums during the World Cup. But imagine a competition that we are doing where you have people in Berlin running, you have people in Paris running, people in Saudi running, and then you have, let's say, 4 different venues, 4 different countries and territories. And then you change the physical running in Paris to a virtual running in Berlin. So this is what we think in terms of augmented reality. We have the capacity to reorganize and to re-engage with different communities in a different ways. And this is exactly the concept of the Futurous games. We have, through technology, the capacity to reinvent completely the exercise of sports and be able to be closer to the communities we want to work with.
Isn't that a good point, that we can fight COVID-19 and all the challenges we have with virtual and augmented reality? And my question here is, as you are aware that Thomas Bach, the IOC president, wrote to many people worldwide asking them for ideas to renew the Olympic Games in a post-COVID world. I mean, he was thinking of a post-COVID world. We learn more and more that maybe by mutations and mutants, we will have not a post-COVID world. We will have to live with COVID and maybe keep distances. And isn't that what you do? Not a good idea also to change the Olympic Games?
You know, we met when I was working as a director for the IOC, and it has been an extremely inspiring experience. There are things that I loved in the IOC and the Olympic movement. There are things that I was probably less sensitive to. But we would be more than happy to work with you and President Bach and his teams, because we think that the innovation capacity of Futurous and the intelligence that we have collected, the person we have met, could be a kind of a test bed for the Olympics to try something different in parallel. So you could have the Youth Olympic Games on one hand, and you could have the Futurous Games on the other hand, working hands in hands with the Olympics. This is something I really believe in, and maybe if you think the idea is relevant, we can engage with President Bach to suggest that.
Yeah, I think this would be a very good idea, as a revolution of the content at the Olympic Games is very slowly starting, I would say, only with the Youth Olympic Games and some new formats. The IOC tries through Agenda 2020 to bring more interest to the youth and to look to new formats and new sports, but this is very slowly. So as you probably agree, the revolution of the content of the Olympic Games is going very slow, but technology revolution is going very quick, as we see.
Exactly. But we need to be positive regarding the Olympics. It's like a huge ship, so it has a momentum. And yes, sometimes it can create some questions or difficulties, but it's also an element to ensure there is stability over a long period, because they are not going right and left all the time. and they have this momentum. And this is why, as an academic, this is why I think that you will have this mothership, which is the Olympics, and in the vicinity of the Olympics, you will have Youth Olympic Games, and you will have something like the Futurous Games. If the IOC is interested, obviously. Otherwise, we have the capacity to work alone, and we have engaged with sponsors. We are currently working with different host territories, and I have been really impressed to be able to engage with the highest level of the Saudi government, with the highest level of the Russian government, the French government, even though we were not representing one organization like FIFA or the IOC, but we had discussions with directly the closer advisors of the president of these countries, or the rulers of these countries. And why do I stress that? It's because I really think that there is an appetite to engage in parallel with the Olympics. There is an appetite to engage in a different way of sport and competition. And the question of technology is, with or without COVID, the question of technology is central to all the governments all over the world, because they have the responsibility to design new environments where their people, their communities live and thrive with technology.
This is very interesting. I think the IOC, and not only the IOC, the Olympic movement is really interested in this new technology and is keen on trying to keep the power over their sports, not to give the sports away to the big technology companies. For example, that FIFA tries to keep FIFA football as the match FIFA is controlling in esports, for example, and not giving it to others. But football is one thing. Other international sport federations also try to develop virtual sports, because this is the easiest entry into the Olympic Games, to my understanding, because the main concern is who is owning a sport and controlling a sport. And if this would be an established international sport federation having a discipline of their sport as in virtual sports, for example, then it could be easily brought, as the international federation is recognized by the IOC, this discipline in the Olympic program. So my talk to our International Ice Hockey Federation General Secretary Horst Lichtner, also in our first podcast, when I talked to him, he said, yes, we have to take care that ice hockey, when it is really like ice hockey, then it should be owned by us and not by someone else. And therefore, I think international federations are starting to develop virtual applications. Therefore, I think the Olympic movement is starting to get ready to work on that together with the international federations, but certainly that will take time. What are the first sports you are aware of, or do you think that can be played as virtual sports?
I want to make a difference between a sport enhanced by technology and a competition with one physical part and one digital part. Because there are many opportunities. Even in wrestling, we can imagine a kind of combination of wrestling where you have the points you are making classically, or in judo, for instance. But by monitoring the activity of the competitors, you can also grant him or her additional points. You can bring new element of constraints or new objectives to the physical part. In basket, for instance, you can say, we are going to value specific points to the teams who have made less steps than another one. So the point I'm stressing is by integrating technology on the field of play, you are creating new opportunities, which gives you the possibility to enrich the activity of sports. And the second element, which is critical, is, as I said, you can also extend the valuation of the sport exercise or the sport performance by integrating comments and points given by the spectators. So what technology gives us is a possibility to reinvent space and time and to create new services and new functions. So there will be elements which will be additional, and we will have also the possibility to take away some specific elements which were physical and substituting them by other elements. For instance, let's take the example you were talking about, the drones competition, and you do a drones race. You can have physical obstacles, but you can also have digital virtual obstacles. So imagine that the environment is not only a physical environment, but is a combination of physical and virtual elements. And the point I'm stressing here, Holger, is what we have done and what we are doing is not only to see sport as it is, but to reinvent the concept of sport and competition. And this is the Futurous Games.
So my question again was about virtual sports and international federation looking for developing a sport everyone can do at home, but then having a competition against others so that this sport becomes independent from the sport venue and the place, and later also from the Olympic Games. Let's say we have so I'm an athlete and play at home.
But I agree with you. This is a huge stake for the existing international federations. I'm not a sport historian, but if we look at how the different disciplines were invented, they took consideration of the physical world around them. If I remember well, the stadium in Olympia was based on the foot of Heracles himself. And that's why it's not 200 meters, but 190 point something meters, because it was based on the physical reality where they took Heracles and he was the one who gave the measures of those. Now, with technology, as you have said, we have the capacity to apprehend not only a physical world, but a physical and a virtual environment. So there are new opportunities. But there is one point I would like to stress, and that's something on which we are going to express ourselves soon, because I have reservations about a technology über alles strategy where people are just doing things for the sake of technology. We need to keep the values of sport. We need to keep that element of humanity. Mens sana in corpore sano. If we are splitting elements just to increase the value add or the value proposal by the technology, but we are diminishing the human factor, we are making a mistake for me.
That is a good point, but COVID-19 reduces the human factor, as keeping distance is not really what the current concept of sport is. What do you think about this?
I'm very critical about what was proposed by Tokyo and the IOC when they published their handbook for COVID-free and safe environment, and when they say you are allowed to clap, you are not allowed to shout and to sing. Aren't we killing the very essence and spirit of sport? Aren't we reducing the sport activity and the relationship between the competitors and the spectators? Aren't we reducing it to just a technical scientific exercise? This is not sport. For me, this is not sport. And And I know you have committed your life working on the economy of sports, but also the elements which are related to the financial, but also the moral values of sport. And this is something on which, Holger, people like you, people like me, people like us need to do something, because otherwise it will just become a technical exercise, but not sport anymore. And I wrote some time ago an article on measures and the growing presence of wearables in sports. And I know that Taylor is supposed to have said, if you cannot measure it, it's a hobby. But if you are measuring everything, you need to be cautious you are not breaking the mystery and the sacrality of sports and bringing it to just a technical performance. So we need to be sensitive to the values. We need to make sure there is an Olympic and the athletes parade. We need to make sure there is the torch relay. We need to make sure there are elements which are rituals, because the notion of sacred, the sacrality, is an element of sport, and definitely an element of the sport competition. And this is why we are interested. So why do I stress that? It's because I want to make sure that our friends and partners from the international federations are not looking at their sport just with a technical glance and a technical perspective. Otherwise, they are going to do damages which will be very, very worrying for the future of sports and the sport values.
This is a wonderful, wonderful closing words. Coming to an end, I would, as usual, ask you 5 questions. So my first question is, what was the biggest surprise you had at a sport event you saw?
Every time I attended an opening ceremony, Albertville or Athens, I cried, because there was a combination of a communion with all the persons who were there, a sense of achievement, and I realized the power of humanity, because you had all these people coming from different places all over the world, and I was really inspired. It was a kind of epiphany.
Second question, as you were so heavily involved in getting the Expo to Dubai 2020, what do you look most forward to?
Obviously, the opening of Expo. I think in terms of content, we will have the opportunities to do Futurous activities, and maybe with you in Expo, because we have been talking about the evolution needed by the world of sport, but there is also an evolution needed in the world of World Expos. People will not visit the world just to see things they can see on the internet. So we need to reconcile the technology elements, the educational elements, the cosmopolitan or universality element together. So I think it's something on which expos in the future will be assessed.
Third question, as you were working with the IOC, what has been the main motivation of the Olympic movement to you?
I don't know, because the beauty of the Olympic movement and the Olympic family, it's a family, but you have different characters, you have different expectations. Everyone is bringing his or her cultural perspective. So what I loved was the fact that these cultures, these specificities were respected, and they reflected our humanity again. So I don't think there was a specific aspiration except being part of it and bringing in an open-minded way their specificities and being eager to know more about the others.
What food do you like most?
Thai food.
Is there any food which will be different in the future and you look forward to I mean, it's not a pill we have in space, but is there any future food?
Listen, it's a very interesting question because as in sport, and when we were talking earlier about the necessity to keep the human factor, food is not only a functional feeding process. It's also a moment where you enjoy things, you enjoy the company. If you love cooking, you enjoy preparing food for the persons who are with you. So I like your question because it's symbolic. It shows that, yes, we can consider it's just taking nutriments and taking pills. So we have everything our body needs to function. However, I think it's much more than that. And there are elements of magic probably in food. And let's make sure that in a world which is more and more directed by experts, and we have seen that with the COVID crisis because we are hearing experts all the day long, every time. But in a world which is more and more under the scrutiny of experts, which is more and more monitored, let's make sure we are keeping some magic. So let's make sure we keep that forever.
Okay, yeah. Last question. What was the most astonishing new technological sport element you ever saw?
And it's not about the activity of the sports itself, it's everything we can do with the data in order to increase the attractivity of the sports towards the fans. So yes, with specific shoes, we can run faster, we can jump higher. With specific suits, we can swim faster. But what is more interesting for me is really this connection between the athletes, who is the modern hero, is representing so many things. We need to have heroes. The athlete who is representing the fight between the good and the bad, all the personal element of overcoming your fears or overcoming your limitations. And for me, data and all the tools which are related to explaining the performance, increasing the understanding of the spectators, for me, that's the biggest innovation, and I love it.
Okay, thank you very much, Philippe. That was
Thank you,
really
Holger.
interesting for this podcast. And yes, all the best for the future. And we are looking forward seeing us somewhere in a Futurous sport games or sport
Thank you
event.
so much. Auf Wiederhören. Bye-bye.
Bye.